Hello and welcome to the C360 1.12 update tutorial video. My name is Benjamin Salmon. I'm the lead developer on the project along with the other guys here at Digital Salmon, and today I'm going to talk you guys through how to create your own tours. The first thing you want to do when creating a brand new tour is create a directory for your tour media and your tour data file. I'm going to be working in the C360 example tour directory, building the example tour that you should find inside the package. So to create a brand new tour, go to your project window, right click, create, complete 360 tour, and give your tour a name. The first thing you'll notice in the inspector when you have your tour selected is that there are a set of fields to fill in. Before creating your tour and laying out your nodes, you'll want to add image media, video media, custom media, prefabs, or hotspots to your tour. So let's start by adding 2 images to our tour. I'm going to use image texture media rather than image URL media, as I'd like my images to be stored inside the project and distributed with my build. So I'm going to drag in 2 of the example media, give them an ID. You'll be using IDs when referring to specific pieces of media in code. You'll also notice that the is stereoscopic tick box appears in your media rather than in your tour. This means that anytime you use this piece of media, it will be treated as stereoscopic or monoscopic, depending on the tick box. Just bear in mind that you will be able to come back and add media later on, but the more you can get done at the beginning, the smoother the tour process will be. Once you've populated your tour with media, you're ready to start laying out your nodes. So double-click your tour data file. This will open up the C360 tour window, which can be docked anywhere in your Unity. To create a new node, right-click, and you'll initially see all the categories of media, such as image URL or video clip. And inside those categories, you'll see all of the media with its relevant IDs that you've loaded into your tour data file. Select the ones you want to place into this tour and place them in your graph. For the sake of demoing, I'm going to include 1 image URL, 1 video clip, and 1 video URL piece of media, just so you guys can see it all working. So I've gone online and found 2 URLs of example media that I can use in this video. Bear in mind they won't be included in the example tour that you download from the asset store, as I don't have permission to redistribute them. I've also included a 360 video clip in this example video, but it won't be included in the package that you download. With these new types of media included, I can now add the nodes to the tour. You'll see that because these are loading from URL or from video clip, they take a moment to load. When working in a tour, if you need to use the same piece of media twice, it can be a good idea to change the ID of a particular node, so that when referencing it in code, you make sure you're getting the correct node. Now, just like before, if I want to create a hotspot, I can right-click a node, drag up and right to the hotspot tool, and release. The only difference is, currently, on a default tour, there's no hotspot template. As a side note, it's really important to keep the console open so that you can see any error messages that are coming up. If you're doing anything wrong or C360 throws any kind of error, it'll usually appear in the console. In this case, cannot create a hotspot because your tour has no hotspot templates. Select your tour object and add at least 1 hotspot template. So I'll go back, select my tour, scroll down to hotspots and see the size is 0. This means I have no types of hotspots in my tour project. C360 comes with 1 example hotspot that you can use in your tours, but if you want to extend it, change the way it looks, change its colors, or add icons or add text, it's pretty easy to do using the prefab system that we'll go over in a little bit. So I'll navigate to my hotspot, drag in the game object reference, I'll give it an icon so that when I'm referencing it in the mapping panel I know which hotspot I'm talking about, and I'll give it an ID. In this case I'm going to call this one default. Now when I go to create a hotspot, if I had multiple hotspots I would get a drop down, but since I've only got 1 it knows I want to use the default one. I can release, and then just like before I can click on any other node to connect a hotspot to it. It will then open the mapping panel where it will ask me where I would like to place my hotspot. I can click once to place the hotspot, I can click and drag to move the hotspot, or I can click off the mapping panel to close it. These 2 nodes are now linked. If you create a hotspot that you don't want anymore, just open up the mapping panel, select your hotspot so that it's highlighted, and press the backspace or the delete key on your keyboard. When you close the mapping panel, you'll see that the connection is gone. So I'll quickly build a tour network here so that we have something to work with in this example. Okay, so I've built a tour network example. If I want to test my tour, what I will want to do is open up the C360 tour scene. You don't have to use this scene, but this scene is ready to go with all the prefabs that I expect you might need to build a tour. The first is the camera base, and this contains a camera and a crosshair. The C360 tour object contains the media sphere and the hotspots and the prefab parent, so this is basically your entire tour. And the base plate top and bottom are 2 base plates you can use if you don't have base plates embedded into your media. If you don't want the base plates, just select and delete them. So I'll go to the Complete 360 Tour object, find the Complete 360 Tour component, and in here I'll add my tour data file under the tour field. It will then ask which entry ID I'd like to use. This is the ID given to the node that I'd like to start my tour with. So if I look here, I have one called Corridor 2, Image URL, Video URL, Corridor, or Front Door. I'm going to start with Corridor 2. I want to auto begin my tour and I want to preload my images. This means that any URL loaded images will be preloaded before you enter the node. I'll press the play button and I'll appear inside my Corridor 2 node. And you'll see that that hotspot I created is ready to go. When I navigate to it, it'll move me into the new piece of media and I can now explore my tour. If I look at the C360 tab whilst in play mode, it'll tell me I must exit play mode before editing my tour. When you first enter a video node, you might notice that your hotspots don't appear, or appear and then quickly disappear. This video also isn't looping. If I navigate to the video in the tour panel, I can open up the mapping panel, click the timeline view, and be given the option of whether to loop. So I'll tick loop. I also here can see a timeline of when I want my hotspots to appear. So if I drag my hotspot to be the full timeline length, my hotspot will appear for the length of the entire video. To save your tour, go to File, Save Project. Pressing play now, I can navigate to that video and it will both loop and contain the hotspot that I created. As an extra tip, if you're working on a hotspot timeline and you set the entry and the exit time to the same time, that hotspot will be auto-activated when that time is crossed. This is really useful if you want to make an auto-playing video tour or make your own adventure with a timeout. You'll notice that when I open some of the media in the tour, I'm facing the wrong direction. You have a few options of how to control this. The first port of call is to open up the mapping panel, click the eye icon in the top left, and drag the eye around. This is the forward-facing direction of your media. There will be two options which you can change. If you open up the media view in the scene hierarchy and check the inspector, you'll see the entry yaw reactor has entry yaw mode set to absolute or dynamic. When set to absolute, all of your entry yaw markers, that's this line here on the media, are considered to be facing north. And no matter which hotspot you enter, they will always be aligned on north. If you set the entry yaw mode to dynamic, then whenever you enter a piece of media, no matter where you come from, your user will be facing this line. Most people will want to use absolute or dynamic, but if you want to create your own system for controlling the direction, open up that script and make your own changes. So I'll open up each of my video nodes, open the mapping panel, open the timeline, make sure all the hotspots are timed the way I want them to be timed, and that looping is set the way I want. So that's how to create a basic tour, which involves media and hotspots. But most users also want to include menus, text pop-ups, audio pop-ups, or 3D pop-ups in the form of prefabs in their tour. If you navigate to the example tour prefabs folder, you'll see a bunch of example prefabs that we've included out of the box just to help you guys get on the way. Bear in mind that if you don't find the prefab you want here, you can always create your own. In 2018.3, Unity released the nested prefab system, and C360 is taking advantage of that workflow to help you guys get on your way quicker. If you double-click any one of the prefabs and navigate to your scene view, you'll see exactly what that prefab contains. You'll get a full hierarchy, and often some components that you can edit. For example, if I go into the complete menu prefab, I can navigate to one of the buttons, scroll down, and see the text and target media for that particular button. But I don't want to edit it here, as the complete menu prefab is just an example. If I right-click one of the prefabs, navigate to Create, Prefab Variant. I'll then call this Example Tour Menu, and double-click it. This prefab variant will inherit from the base prefab complete menu, but changes can be made. For a complete rundown of how the nested prefab system works, Unity has lots of useful tutorials and you'll find plenty of content on YouTube. So I'll come in, I'll edit my text, and I'll edit the target media. Bear in mind that whenever we refer to a piece of media here, we're talking about a node ID, not a media ID. That's the name that appears under your node when you hover it, and it can be changed by clicking it and making changes. Make sure you save your project often, and once you're done, either you'll have auto save ticked and you'll be ready to go, or you'll want to click the save button on the prefab. Next, I'll navigate to my example tour, scroll down to prefab sources, and add the prefab I just made. I'll give it an icon and an ID. Then when I open up my tour, I can go to the Map Prefab option, and I'll get a drop down for all of the included prefab sources in my tour. In this case, I only have one, and its ID is Example Tour Menu. I'll then click that, and it'll give me the option to place it inside the mapping panel. In this case, just for the example, I'm going to add the prefab to the base scene, just so that we can hit play and see it straight away. I'll save my tour, press play, and take a look at the menu that we've just added. You see it says stereo, living room, and video URL, just like I put into the example prefab variant. In many cases, the prefabs that are included in C360 come with example components that you can fill out, rather than needing to dig into the hierarchy. But if you want to add things such as icons or additional text or change fonts, you'll want to go down into the hierarchy, select the appropriate component, for instance the TextMesh Pro UGUI component, and change things from there, such as the alignment or the spacing or the color. One of the most common questions that we get asked is, will C360 work with this SDK, this VR headset, or this system I've developed? In all cases, the best bet is to open up the tour scene and then look at the camera base or Complete 360 Tour prefabs. By selecting each object, you can see which components have been added to them. For example, if you didn't want mouse look to be enabled, you could locate the mouse look component on the camera and turn it off. You could right-click and remove the component if you were sure you weren't going to use it permanently. The gaze input raycaster is a good example of something that lots of people have wanted to attach to a controller. Just remove the component from the camera so that the gaze doesn't come from the camera anymore, and add the same component to whatever controller you've brought in with your SDK. It will fire a ray along the Z axis, that's the forward axis of whichever transform you attach it to, and that ray will interact with any interactables in the scene. For anything related to image media, check the image reactor script. For anything for video, check the video reactor script. And bear in mind that you can change the video reactor script to work with any video player that you want, providing you've got a bit of C# knowledge. Hotspots are spawned through the hotspot reactor, and prefabs are spawned through the prefab reactor. If you're having issues with any of these, or you'd like to change the way that they work, those are the scripts you want to start with.